Hello and welcome to this Dawn Busters Taste Challenge. Well, dawn is breaking here at 5:45 a.m. See daylight arriving as it tends to do every morning at various times, depending on if we have real time or like right now, the pretend manufactured daylight savings time. Okay, more blended Scotch whiskey. After today, we're going to go back and do some American Scotch with some American blended whiskey, then Canadian blended whiskey, and then back to Scotch. And round and round and round. I don't think this is going to be too tremendous of a challenge, but it'll be a little bit of a challenge. Okay. We've got Buchanan's Deluxe, 12-year age, their base model. You can get more expensive ones here, okay, of this. This is the $35 a bottle for, this is a half-size bottle, but normally it's about $35. Versus Scoresby. Now, Scoresby is aged 3 years. Now, Buchanan's was introduced in 1884. Scoresby was introduced in 1960. I'll get it right. This is a Diageo brand, and Buchanan's is also a Diageo brand. So they're both Diageo brands now. So a 3-year age versus, 12-year aged. There's just one Scoresby. There's no levels of it. It says distilled and blended in Scotland. Doesn't say bottled in Scotland. It says it's bottled in Stamford, Connecticut. Yeah, so like a lot of these inexpensive Scotch whiskeys, they distill it, age it over there in Scotland. They ship it in big tankers, I guess, some kind of big tank. And then they bring it and bottle it in Kentucky or New Jersey or Connecticut. A lot of Canadian whiskeys are bottled down in Illinois and Kentucky. Okay. Scoresby. I think Scoresby is a pretty credible product for what it is. But the price on it is a little peculiar because in Georgia, John Anille says very inexpensive. And in Louisiana, it's not inexpensive. The 1,750 milliliter bottle is about $35. You can find it on sale, like Walmart selling it right now on sale to $30. They're doing a closeout. They're resetting again. They're resetting their liquor section. So they looks like they're getting rid of Clan McGregor altogether. I don't know why. But they've got the $7 bottles. Normally it's $9.72. And it looks like they're getting rid of Scoresby. Walmart only had Scoresby in the big plastic jug bottles, but I'm talking about the Walmart here. Now, I noticed that Walmart will sell different liquor at different stores. So I guess it's not all corporate decision, like the local manager is allowed to make choices, or it could be done at a corporate level, just reflecting different regions and stores. I don't know Walmart's internal operations. Well, first of all, we'll notice that the Scoresby is much lighter. I think you'll see that. It's pale straw, and the Buchanan's is a gold. So very pale, even paler than straw, I guess, and this one is gold. Valentin George says, hello. Hello, Valentin. So let's mix them up. I got to be careful not to glance because I'll easily tell them apart. I think the Buchanan's going to be, now the aroma may not be easy to differentiate, okay? So in the aroma, it may not be a big difference. But in the flavor, yeah, I think the Buchanan's Deluxe is going to have a much smokier aspect, be like a tunnel of smoke.
And the Scoresby just going to start having that corn liquor flavor start to come into play. You know, that grain whiskey, whatever you want to call it. It's the same principle anyway. Corn, the filler. I have a feeling you have a preference toward Buchanan's. Yes, because it tastes better than the rest. I have no other reason to have a preference, but yeah, it tastes better. I think Chivas Regal is going to be better. The only one I had so far that could rival Buchanan's, and it didn't beat it, rivaled it, was the Cutty Sark, because it's so light and smoky. And I think J&B, whenever I buy that, and the Chivas Regal is going to probably surpass it. They're about the same price, about $35 a bottle. They have sales, various stores. There's been a price war going on around here. So we've had liquor prices dropping, pretty sharp drops in liquor prices around here lately. So, and beer and wine. So that's been nice. Not so much wine, but beer for sure, and liquor, yes. All right. Blind test. Can't look. Right. Okay. Sweetness and smoke, and smells like Scores because I'm getting a lot of sweet, you know, that corn smell, like corn sugar, corn syrup, corn starch thing. Get that with American blended whiskey in a different way, but you can still pick it up. Canadian, yes. Canadian whiskey kind of masks it with a lot of the additives, like, I don't mean artificial ingredients, but the other distilled things, the rum, the brandy, the bourbon, the plum wine, the sherry wine. So they're allowed to do that. So the Canadian, you know what I mean? They mask it, they cover up. That's what you do. You can do, if you can get away with it, you can cover it up. American whiskey blended, they can add up to 2% sherry. So they try to mask it, but it doesn't really work too well usually, except with like Seagram's 7 Crown. They must age it pretty long in the wood because it has a nicer flavor. A lot of them, they just taste like corn whiskey. They're not, and like worse than corn whiskey, just like base product. Not like rot gut horrible, tremendously bad, just like filler. A mixing base. You take the whiskey and you make mixed drinks. In that sense, they're fine. I think they're fine. But to drink alone in isolation, the more you do it, the less you like it, I believe, in my experience. This one on the nose is lighter. It's maltier. There's more of a barley malt, less corn, and more smoke. I'm not looking, but I think Chivas Regal is my favorite also. Yeah, I'd like to try it. And I tried the Johnny Walker Friday, just the base model, the red label. Really nice. Wonderful product. Yeah, a little heavy bodied, not so light, you know, because it's probably more corn. But I'd like to try the Johnny Walker Blue Label, but I would not like to pay $259 for a bottle. No, thank you. Sorry. Okay. Let's go with the taste. Then I'll be able to tell them apart, I do believe. Okay. Well, I'm getting a fairly good amount of smoke here, I gotta admit. It does seem to be some cereal grain, like corn grits. If you eat a lot of grits like we do in Louisiana, you get a taste for it. The Mathern's, and I guess Winn-Dixie and Walmart too around here, and Food for Less, they sell yellow grits and white, you know, yellow and white. Take your pick. All right. Okay. Nice smokiness, a little pork flavor. Smoked pork. I just picked that up with these scotch. That's what it tastes like to me. Like with the Roch beers, the Schlinkerler Roch beers. Okay. I told you that aroma can throw you for a loop a little bit. But in the taste, nah. It's pretty obvious, I think. In my right hand could be to your left, what you're seeing, but in my right hand, this has got to be Scoresby, and I'm going to tell you why. And I paid about $15.50 for that bottle, by the way. So I'm saying it's like, it's not like in Georgia where it's like $10 a bottle. It's 15, 16 bucks. This one just tastes like corn grits. I'm telling you right now, if I take this and put it up against an American blended whiskey like trying to think of one I've got. Barton Premium, that's a standard product you get in the middle of the United States, mid, you know, like Kentucky and Tennessee and all that. Probably Alabama. Yeah, it's just like grain, distilled grain. Is there a lot of smokiness and peat with this one? No. You put this up against Barton Premium and you're going to notice a lot more similarities than differences. You say, yeah, but that one's from Kentucky and this one's from Scotland. I don't care. It's just like column still mass produced. And they got to they mass produce it because it's a saleable item. You know, they sell it. I mean, people buy it. Yeah, it just tastes very common. That's the word I'm looking for. Common and basic. Is it bad tasting? It's not bad tasting. It's like nothing tasting. You know what I mean? So, I mean, Barton is $5.99 and this one is $15.50. I guess you can imagine which one I would buy. And in reality, I wouldn't buy either one. I wouldn't really buy them. I like stuff with more flavor, to tell you the truth. And so, you know, I've done it. I've done the cheap ones, the American blended. I've done the Canadian blended cheap ones, and I've done the cheap blended Scotch. Okay, so good. I might buy Inverhouse. Green label. It's pretty inexpensive. I know it's going to be basic also. Supposedly it's a fast growing brand. I don't know what the attraction is, but I'll probably buy the Inverhouse. I don't think I'm gonna get Passport. Oh yeah, that's the one that's fast growing, Passport Scotch. You know, I'm not gonna buy a big plastic jug bottle of it though. No thanks. And there's so many others over there. What's that other one? You see it? Oh, I might buy Grant's because kind of an iconic one. What's that other one you see? VAT 69. We only get the VAT 69 gold here. I don't know what makes that different. Old Smuggler. Yeah, it's probably going to be the same type thing. J&B might have a little more character, but I'd rather get into the more developed blended Scotch whiskeys, not to mention single malt, but you know, like the Chivas Regal and the J&B and all that. I think they're going to be up to the level of the I couldn't think of the name, the Buchanans. Yeah, I mean, it's so much smoke. So much smoke. How about Jack Daniels? Well, yeah, I mean, Jack Daniels is a famous Tennessee whiskey. In other words, a bourbon. I've got two versions, the black label and the green. I've made many videos with them in taste challenges. I'm not really a bourbon person because I find they've got too much corn, grits taste. Some people like that. I don't mind the wood. I like the wood. Char, I like the char, I like the smoke in that sense, but yeah, it's just too much corn grits for me. And I don't care. I've had expensive bourbons, cheap ones, mid-range, and they all have that corn profile, and I just don't like it. I like corn and I like grits, but that's to eat, not really to drink. So I'm not one of these Jack Daniels bashers that get on there and want to establish street credibility by bashing Jack Daniels. You know, it's fine. It's just not for me, you know. Interesting, but again, you are comparing a premium and a well or a club whiskey, even though Scoresby is one of the better well whiskeys, says Robert. You're right. I mean, I know what I'm doing. That's why I said it wasn't going to be a true challenge. You know, it's not really a fair. It's good to do it in a way, though, because it helps you understand if you can compare cheaper to more expensive. If you can't, tell them apart, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you. It just might. Some people don't have good perception of flavor, and they can't tell an expensive from a cheap. It could be a benefit for them because then they could just get the cheap stuff and be happy with it. No problem, you know. I can tell them apart, and I would not be happy with just the cheap stuff. I know people that can drink Rockdale premium beer and be so happy with Rockdale Classic. To me, it's a dreadful item. Dreadful. You know, these cheap Scotch or Canadian whiskeys or American blended. They're not dreadful. They're just kind of like blah, bland, dull, uneventful, unexciting. I can live with that. But the cheap beers, you know, the Boxer Lager and the Rockdale Classic, they're not just uneventful and dull. They're just downright bad. You can't. They're grim. It's like a grim experience. It's like in wine. You could get the Wild Irish Rose or the MD 2020, and they are getting into the grim area. You know what I mean? Like you say, oh man, like when I was drinking that Wild Irish Rose Moscato, 17% alcohol. Can you imagine that strong? It's like fuse airplane, you know, it's like jet fuel. I say, wow, where is the person in life when they're drinking that? That is just, it's grim. You can get your Carlo Rossi and your Livingston Cellars. Those are okay. You know, they're nice. They're kind of like what we're talking about here on this whiskey level. Bourbon by law must be at least 51% corn, but less than 80% corn. That's correct. You're right about that. The remaining whiskey is rye, barley, or wheat whiskey. Correct. That's right. Absolutely right. Which is probably why I don't like it, because it's too corny. I think people have a right to not enjoy bourbon. I don't hate it. I'm not like an anti-bourbonite. It just doesn't appeal to me too much. I've drank a good amount of them, and they're fine. But honestly, it is not something I would reach for. The Scotch, I prefer much more, much more, much more. And I know people I was talking to a man yesterday. He hates Scotch. He said, I don't like Scotch. And he buys very, very, very expensive bourbon from Mathern's. Very expensive. $200 bottles, $150 bottles, $90 bottles. He said, I've got Scotch behind my bar that's 40 years old. Never opened. I said, if you want to get rid of it, I'll take it. You know, I just laid that out there. Why? You know, what's the purpose of having it if you're not going to drink it? The way I see it. So the last time I said that to somebody, he brought me 2 bottles, right? Wild Turkey 101 from 1983, a bottling, 83 bottling. And he brought me a Old Crow from 1977, a bottling. And that's the old Crow, the original Old Crow. Much better than today's, although today is fine. I actually like Old Crow bourbon more than a lot of the other ones. Okay, time to differentiate, time to put my money where my mouth is, okay? I mean, if this is not Buchanan's, I'm a monkey's uncle, okay? Because this thing over here, oh, yeah, you see, like Diageo doesn't even feature this on their website. It exists, but they don't talk about it. Literally, you cannot find any Scoresby on their website. I looked on their corporate website, their trade website, you know, their pop fan website, whatever you want to call it, thebar.com, where they feature all their premiers. They don't talk about Scoresby. They don't want to talk about Scoresby. They don't even use their name on the label. They call it United Importers or whatever they call it. Buchanan's, yes. There's a section dedicated to Buchanan's. They describe it in detail. Then there's a link to its own website. They talk about the history, the production of it, you know, the process and everything. So some of these brands, the company tries to hide from. Like, let's not talk about that. If you went on a distillery tour, they might, escort you to some other area of the property. I don't know. They like Beam's 8-star. Jim Beam, they love talking about that. Beam's 8-star. I don't think that's going to go over too well if you bring that up on the tour. You know what I mean? Crown Royal is corn, rye, and malted barley whiskey blended. Blended Scotch has corn in it. Okay, single malts do not. That's correct. That's correct. If you can ever get cream of Kentucky, please do. Cream of Kentucky. Somehow, I've heard of that, but I haven't seen it. Now, you know, we're talking about corn, and I'm going on and on about corn, corn, corn. Funny, though. It's funny. The mellow corn, right? Mellow corn, which is almost all corn, right? 100 proof. I love that. And then I've got this New England corn whiskey. New England Berkshire Mountains Distilling corn whiskey aged in oak and cherry wood. It's really nice. It's peculiar. I knew I need to get into Crown Royal. That's a rabbit hole. If I start doing Crown Royal, there's so many variants I'll get sucked into. I'll never escape. You know what I mean? I'll just be doing the whole video channel will change to Crown Royal. That'll be my new channel. I know some people, they have hundreds of bottles of Crown Royal. That's all they collect. They're so proud of their collection. They just say every variant. That's all they drink. They'll put that on Facebook. Look, Crown Royal. I say, wow. Okay, enough's enough. This has gotta be Buchanan's. Now it has an underlying corn flavor, but you got to search for it. You know what I mean? It's not up front. It's covert. It is not overt. Yeah, BD, Buchanan's Deluxe. Now with the Scoresby, it's corn forward. You know what I'm saying? It's like Quaker corn. You can go to the store and buy the Quaker grits. This is what this, like literally, it tastes like Quaker grits without the salt. It's like corn forward. Is there smokiness? Well, you could make that argument. It's funny, for people that are turned off by Scotch because of the smoky character, they probably prefer the dang Scoresby because it tastes more like a Seagram 7 Crown. It's a lot of cross. If you're in the if you are in Pattaya or Angeles City or Rio de Janeiro, Caracas, Santo Domingo, he might have spelled it wrong, Santo Domingo. Any place Buchanan's is Buchanan's. Yeah, that's like really popular in Latin America. I can see why it's popular because it's a wonderful product. This is like what's blended Scotch whiskey supposed to taste like. You know what I mean? I can see why single malt became so popular because this is what it's supposed to be, the blended. But a lot of people started to associate it with things like this, you know, and they were like, oh, what's going on? You know? Yeah, because it's always that same story where the cheapness comes into play, and so it just deteriorates, you know, and it's like, you don't really find too many dreadful bourbons because the law is sort of strict, you know, not as strict as you might believe. Oh, Jacob Miller says, good morning. Good morning, Jacob. Not as strict as you might believe. Like a lot of people think bourbon has to be aged 2 years. No, go and read that again very carefully, the regulations, because you have to read them very carefully and slowly. It doesn't say bourbon has to be aged 3 years. I'm sorry, 2 years. Even the Jim Beam commercial says that. Like, what's her name? Mila Kunis. She says she's actually an immigrant from the Soviet Union, Jewish immigrant, Russian immigrant. But that's beside the point. Just a lot of people don't realize that. But because she got such a California accent now. But if you watch the Jim Beam commercial, she says, Jim Beam is aged 2 years longer than the requirement for bourbon. 2 long years extra, you know, 4 years. Well, that's the requirement for straight bourbon whiskey, straight, which is a category. It is not the only category. It's simply a category. If you look on the U.S. government regulations website, it says there's another category called bourbon whiskey. Bourbon. And it's like you're saying about the 51% corn and all that. But if you notice, there's nothing about the age requirement. There is no age requirement. It just says it has to be aged in never before used, right? Charred, has to be charred, because if it's not charred, then it's corn whiskey. Oak barrels, has to be oak, has to be charred, and but there's no requirement on aging. So theoretically, I guess you could age it for a week. Now, no one would buy it because it would be clear, right? No one's going to buy a clear whiskey with no color, and people are calling it bourbon. They're going to say, oh, yeah, heck. But look at that Redemption Rye. Redemption High Rye. Age 1 year. And you can notice it's light. It's like, why is this stuff so light? It's like it's almost like beige instead of brown or red. That's because it's only in the barrel for a year, maybe a year and a day, because it says it aged at least a year. Well, you know, it ain't going to be over a year. Or they'd say it was 2. They can't add coloring. You know, bourbon cannot not add coloring. Scotch can, by the way, so can Canadian. American blended whiskey can add coloring, but they have to disclose it. Bourbon cannot at all. Even if they disclose it, it can't be called bourbon. So that's a funny little part of the whiskey world, that bourbon technically does not have to be aged any length of time. I mean, it has to be aged. Aged, but what does that mean? Could be a year, right? So, you know, that Redemption High Rye was okay. And I mean, like, okay. But hell, excuse my language. Heck, I'd rather just get the dang Kentucky Tavern, which is aged 3 years at least. And you know, right now, I'm talking about this price war. Get this, and then we're off the air. Get this. Dorgnax has Kentucky Tavern right now, a liter, not a 750, a liter bottle for $8.99. Now I was impressed when it was $10.99. I couldn't believe it, you know. Now they've got it for $8.99, and Kentucky Tavern is straight bourbon whiskey. You know, so it's aged at least 2 years, but it's 3. It says right there on the bottle. I said, by golly, for $8.99 a liter, that's the best value of bourbon on earth. And it's not bad. I wouldn't buy it on purpose because I don't care for bourbon, like I just finished talking about. But it's really amazing, you know. So if you get a cheap bourbon, they tend to hold up. You know, they can kind of hang with it. You know, they can make it. These cheap scotches, not so much. Is there any cheap scotch that can handle it, that can hang? You know, Clan McGregor seems to do okay. Clan McGregor seems to do okay. Clan McGregor. I'm so tempted to go pay $7 and buy that bottle. I'm so tempted. I'm not going to do it, I don't think. But I got at least $7 for a bottle of scotch, and it's not bad. Yeah, there's something about this Scoresby. It's like, hold on, I got to take one more little tiny sip just to remind myself. Okay, we're talking about a quarter of an ounce here. It smells like, I swear to you, it smells like grain alcohol, straight grain. Forget smoke. It smells like almost like a doctor's office. And I can go get a bottle of that cheap Albertsons American blended whiskey. I don't think it's any different than this. And I paid $4.99 for that. And the taste, I swear it's like that. It's so, oh man, how can they? Oh, they're kind of fun to drink because you just can't believe it. You know, like when you drink it, you're like stunned, you know, that people buy it, which adds a perverse sort of fun to it. You know what I mean? Like, it's so not what it should be that it's almost fun. Like, I mean, in a perverse way, in a demented sort of way. Would I recommend Scoresby? No. I mean, if you get it for $4.99, oh my gosh. Would I recommend Buchanan's? Oh, that's my heart. That's my heart. That Buchanan's Deluxe 12 years, my heart. If I tried their really expensive Buchanan's, I might lose my mind. Thanks for watching this video production.